Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this community conversation brought to you in partnership between the Prince George's County Memorial Library System and the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Office of Human Rights. And the Executive Director of our office, Renee Alsobrooks, will be co-hosting with me today, so you'll see her in just a minute. We are so excited about today's community conversation, which is highlighting Morissa Hall. The daughter of Morse Hall III and Theresa Church Moriarty, Morissa is a 16-year-old from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. She is a 3-time Maryland High School Rodeo All-Around Cowgirl champion and a 2-time Rodeo Queen. She is the first African-American high school rodeo queen in Maryland. In 2022, County Executive Angela Alsobrooks proclaimed October 24th as Morissa Hall Day in Prince George's County in recognition of Morissa's incredible accomplishments. She is currently the 2023 Maryland High School Rodeo Association's barrel racing, pole bending, goat tying, and all-around champion. In her first year of high school in 2021, she was the 2020-2021 Maryland High School Rodeo Pole Bending Champion, Rookie of the Year, and Reserve Barrel Racing Champion, All-Around Cowgirl, and Rodeo Queen. She competed in barrel racing, pole bending, and the Queen contest at the National High School Finals Rodeo in Nebraska in her first year. She won the impromptu question portion of the National High School Rodeo Queen contest and placed 23rd overall in the nation. She is the first Maryland High School Rodeo Queen to win a portion of the National High School Rodeo Queen contest. In 2022, she competed at the NHSRF in Wyoming in barrel racing, pole bending, goat tying, and the Queen contest, and she placed 17th overall in the nation as the Maryland High School Rodeo Queen and 5th in the speech competition. So I'm going to say right now that I'm definitely going to be asking Morissa and her family some questions about those events. So if you're watching and wondering about them, we're going to get some answers soon. In addition to her extensive accomplishments in rodeo, only some of which I've just captured, Morissa is a successful student maintaining a 4.2 GPA at Elizabeth Ann Seton High School, where she participates in honors and advanced placement classes, is a National Honor Society inductee, is a member of the Seton Diamonds, which is the school's women's empowerment group, and is active in theater, community service, and much more. Morissa is proud to represent Maryland locally and across the country. She competes 12 months of a year, and she's grateful to God for his covering and provision. Her favorite quote from Albus Dumbledore is, "Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if only one remembers to turn on the light." And she would like to thank everyone who has helped and supported her. Before I bring Morissa and her family up and the co-host, Renee Alsobrooks, I am just going to share a video of Morissa so you can see some of what she does.
All right, Morissa Hall, Team Maryland, we go back through it. Second pass through the pattern, Team Maryland.
Three and a half years in, and I just did it. I just started talking while muted. Welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here. With us, we have Morissa Hall, her father, Morse Hall. Her mom, Theresa, is going to be joining us in just a few minutes. And of course, we also have Renee Alsobrooks. Welcome, all of you.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Welcome, welcome. And thank you, Kyla, for that introduction. And welcome. I'm looking forward to this conversation. But before we begin, I want to know what it's like having a day named after you.
It was actually very exciting because when we went to the county executive's office, I didn't really know what we were going there for, per se. I don't think you knew. Did you?
Yeah, well, we were invited. We were invited to the ceremony in recognition of Morissa and what she's been able to accomplish. But the actual proclamation, I had no idea of that.
No. Because I remember there was a table in the office that it was kind of a U table that surrounded just about the perimeter of the room, and I was sitting down, and Miss Angela was talking, and she said, and now October 24th is Morissa Hall Day, and I'm kind of just there like, oh, okay, that's nice. Totally caught me off guard, and I remember I was extremely happy. I came home and I texted all my friends, and it was a day. It was a very great day. I was very thankful for the county executive for that.
Yeah, that is awesome. Did you make them like kiss your ring or?
I don't know. I think I was on a high horse for a minute. I most definitely texted them and I was like, guess who has a day named after them?
No, that is great. That is great. Well, we'll start with some basic questions because maybe not everyone listening has a full understanding of the sport and of the magnitude. So what is a rodeo? What is it comprised of? What is the purpose? What do you do?
So rodeo kind of is a combination of sports of Western lifestyle activities, herding cattle, herding goats, riding bucking broncos, things that were done on a ranch that have now been just integrated into a sport that now people can watch for entertainment and for money. We have roping, which ranch hands used to do to collect the cattle. And throughout the times, this started back in the 1800s in Mexico. And then after the Spanish-American War, it started traveling and integrating up all throughout the United States. And it started out just as little fun games, competitions between the different people, saying who can stay on the bucking bronc the longest, who can rope the calf the fastest, just races and just great fun that is now integrated into a sport that people love all over the country and the world too.
Yeah, I think most people don't know, just as you said, that this, rodeo and sort of cowboys, that really is from our southern neighbors in Mexico, and that some of the first cowboys were Black and brown folks. It's something that I love to remind people that it's not what we see on TV, right? It really started with right, as I said, Black and brown folks. So fabulous. So what does one do to condition or train in this sport? And there are lots of different things to do within the sport, right? Roping or, all of those things. But overall, how does one start to train for this?
I think firstly, you have to train your mind. Mm-hmm. I think you should start there. That's something that I still struggle with now, is getting in that calm spot, because it is scary. People ask me this all the time, like, is it scary you're riding a horse? And of course it is. You're on an 1,000-pound animal that has a mind of its own. Yeah. But also mentally preparing yourself and just trying to center yourself while you're on the horse to make sure that you're not making them anxious, because the horse can feel a fly, which is a tiny little fly. A horse can feel that on its skin. Think about if I'm anxious and I'm on the horse and I'm shaking and I'm breathing really heavy, they can feel that. Yeah. And then they're starting, oh goodness, what is happening? Why is she anxious? Something in there's going to eat me. And so before you try to condition your horse, make sure your horse is strong, make sure your feed regimen is the way it's supposed to be and consistently practice. Make sure that you're in the correct headspace to be able to connect with your horse.
Yeah, and what you've just said are such beautiful life lessons, actually. That it transitions and transcends, right, training your mind, understanding your environment, because that's really what you're talking about, knowing how to navigate that, knowing what's healthy for the outcome, knowing right? So that is awesome. So I hope people listening can, pick up that kernel, because that is rich.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I've got more questions, but I'm
sure. I have so many questions too. So, but I'll jump in because I am so curious. I believe I read somewhere, Morissa, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you're first generation involved in rodeo.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. So tell us through how you came to rodeo.
So I grew up attending the Bill Pickett Rodeo, the Bill Pickett Rodeo Finals, which is held at the Prince George's County Equestrian Center, which isn't far from my house. And so ever since I was young, I don't remember a time where I didn't go to the Bill Pickett. Mm-hmm. So that was my first introduction to a rodeo. And if you don't know, the Bill Pickett Rodeo is a rodeo association that was honored for Bill Pickett, who was a very influential Black cowboy. He invented the sport bulldogging, which is the sport that I wanted to do when I was really tiny and the calf would trample me. But bulldogging is when you get off your horse, the steer and the calf are running, and you jump off your horse, grab the calf, and wrestle it to the ground. So as a 8-year-old girl wanting to wrestle calves, I don't know. But I grew up going to that rodeo, and when I think it was in first grade, I asked my dad for a horse, and my dad told me if I earned straight A's that he would get me one. So I ended up earning straight A's 16 consecutive times. Thank you.
That's amazing.
So he fulfilled his end of the bargain, and I started, and he bought me my two horses, Maya and Apache. But at that time, I was still a full-time gymnast. From when I was very young, I think it was 2 up until 6th grade, I was a competitive gymnast for USAG, United States of America Gymnastics. And when I stopped doing gymnastics and I started riding, I went to a trial rodeo for the Maryland High School Rodeo Association in Howard County for the Maryland High School Rodeo Association's annual Battle by the Bay. And that is a huge rodeo. And it's grown about 4 times since when I went there, but it was still it was the biggest rodeo I've ever been to. It was also my first. And so they let me try it out. And when I tell you that the conditions for that rodeo were not ideal, it was freezing cold and it poured the entire weekend. So everything was muddy, everybody was wet, horses were wet, your hat was wet, you're soaking wet, and you're just running in the rain. But somehow I had one of the greatest times of my life that influenced me to start competing in this sport.
That had to be dangerous, actually, with, I think of muddy and slipping. And,
I want to know what Dad thought while this was happening.
Yeah.
She's correct. I mean, if you can imagine in your mind, we're at the Howard County Fairgrounds, right? And we're camped up, there's a whole hillside full of trailers and campers and horses everywhere. And it's raining. It's cold, windy, raining. I'm there with a trash bag over me, trying to stay dry. And these kids, Morissa and even the Jackson kids, who you had on previously, they never complained. I mean, they laughed and had a good time, and they went in and competed. And with rodeo, unlike other sports, if it's not lightning, we want a rodeo.
You're out there.
So that's another one of the caveats that I try to encourage Morissa, and I encourage the other kids, that this sport is incredibly difficult. It's very challenging. Right? It's vastly different than basketball, soccer, and football. One, because of the environmental conditions. 2, as Morissa mentioned, your ability to stay in a proper space, a focused space. And then 3, you have an animal that literally has a mind of its own. Right? So it's with basketball, and then of course, lastly, in basketball, I get several shots while I'm playing the game. If I miss one, I get another chance. They don't get another chance. I mean, they practice 3-4 hours a day for
Yeah.
one chance.
Right.
So you have to imagine that as a kid, the amount of nervousness and fear that's involved in that, because every day they're practicing, feeding horses, taking horses to the vet, on and off a trailer, and you only get one chance at the show.
That chance, depending on your event, can vary from 2 seconds to 20.
Wow. So that margin,
Yeah.
It is intense.
Yeah. But again, I do hearken back to just more life lessons, right? Because, you know, just because you put everything into it, you do everything right, you're committed, you are consistent, you do all of those things, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the payoff or the reward, right? And then learning to deal with that or coping, that is fabulous. I did have a question for Dad, Kyla. I'm just going to jump in. I'm assuming that you were the one that took her to the Bill Pickett rodeo.
Yes, ma'am.
And so was this something that was in your family tradition to go to this, or tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I wouldn't say rodeos per se, right? My father's people are from South Carolina, right? From an agricultural background and farming. My mother's people are from right here in Warrenton and Front Royal, Virginia. Same thing. We have cattle and an agricultural background, but we've never competed in this type of sport. So indeed, Morissa is the first person to ever compete in rodeo in my family, not just in our nuclear family, but even in the larger family. Now, we do have a cousin, Roger Roberts, and he is a influential trailblazer in horse training, right? Down in Florida. And he's done it as long as I can remember. And he's always been an idol of mine, because I've seen him do things with horses, and he's a great trainer, competitor, etc. But again, that's still not rodeo. So with that being said, no, I don't have any practical experience on my own. So when Morissa decided, well, Daddy, I want to do rodeo, I had to aggressively, quickly learn how to manage it, how to manage horses, just everything. And, we made some jokes last weekend. We were in Wellsville, Pennsylvania, which is one of the first rodeos Morissa had. And it brought back a flood of emotions and memories, at least for me, because I can remember being there and not knowing what to do. Like just really trying to feel my way around. And she's there and she's depending on me to help her and teach her what she needs to do. And we're grateful that it's worked out, right? But that first year, Morissa's first year competing, she came last place in every event in her Maryland standings.
Right.
So that started an inferno inside of me, right? And even in Morissa, she said, Daddy, I want to do it. And I said, well, then we're going to give it everything we have. And we've been gracious to have other extremely influential people in our lives to help pour into us, teach us, and help us along the way. So that first year was a middle school year. So the second year competing, but her first year in high school is when she was able to achieve what we mentioned before. Rookie of the Year, Queen, pole bending champion, reserve barrel racing champion. So the inspiration is in the details, right? Because she didn't just get off the couch and then it just happened, right? That first year was tough. It was tough on the whole family, all of us. We were feeling our way around in the dark. But because of the work, because of other people's blessings, because of her commitment and his family's commitment, it turned around and she became victorious. And I think that's been our message, is believing that it can happen and doing the work that's required, and it pays off.
Here's a life lesson. I just want to welcome Theresa, Marissa's mom, who's just joined us. Thank you so much for being with us, Theresa.
Yeah.
We were just, oh, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
please.
I was gonna say, we were just sort of talking about the history of how Morissa got involved in rodeo and your family. And I want to just jump off of something that Morris said. You know, you mentioned, Morissa, maybe you can talk to this. It's tough first year that was like not easy, or maybe not conventionally successful. Let me say that. How did you have the wherewithal to continue and keep going?
Well, first, I would like to point out that almost everyone in my family is extremely competitive. Like I was probably one of those girls in PE who would go over the top because I wanted my team to win. Like I said, I grew up, I've played soccer, I did gymnastics for a very good portion of my life. So I've always loved the feeling of winning. And so of course, it was disheartening when I did place last. But it gave me that spunk to try to say, okay, this can't happen again. I'm not going to settle for this. But then again, also not getting too hard on myself because this was my first year.
Mm-hmm.
So just the process of encouraging yourself and just pushing yourself, saying, okay, something needs to change, but don't get too hard on yourself about it. Know that there are things that you need to fix, but don't beat yourself up about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a change of subject, but a couple of times now, as part of the, not protocol, but the regimen of in this sport, the mention of sort of feeding the horse, you know, the correct way. Can you speak to that? Because again, I think those are some sort of bigger and broader lessons that everybody can relate to in terms of what that symbolizes. Why is that important? How do you figure out how to do that, etc.? And why is that part of the sport?
Well, we all want our horses to be in the best shape that they can be. So that comes with feed, that comes with conditioning, that comes with even just bonding with your horse so that your horse trusts you. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that's one of the things that I advocate for, is that your relationship with your horse is more important than winning. At the end of the day, your horse is your partner. They're on the same boat as you are. They're going into that arena, giving you everything that they have. And just because you had a bad run doesn't mean you beat up your horse, and because your horse had a bad run also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the feed that I use Nutrina, which is one of my sponsors. We use the Boost, right?
There's a Boost and Fiber Plus.
We use the Boost and the Fiber Plus, and I'll give an example. When we first bought my barrel horse Gracie, you could see her ribs, and she was very skittish, and she didn't like you touching certain parts of her back. And we started working with her, started working on her mind, started feeding her the Boost, started feeding her the Fiber Plus, and now she's become a much more pleasurable horse to ride. So I will attest to say that trying to keep your horse healthy, physically and mentally healthy, that can take your relationship with your horse a long way.
Mm-hmm. And I'll have one more question. Sorry, Kyla. Just you talked about sort of playing soccer before and gymnastics and some of the other. Gymnastics is less of what we would call sort of a team sport. It is, but it's still very individual. How would you compare? And as I'm hearing you talk, I recognize that your horse is your team member, right? But how would you compare that to, say, the soccer or the baseball, or where it takes everybody?
I would say I did play volleyball for my first 2 years when I was a freshman and a sophomore. So that was another one of my team sports. And what I will say is that volleyball was really difficult for me because it wasn't me. And it was hard for me when the other girls would get disheartened and when we would start losing and they would just give up. And I'm over here like, guys, come on, we still got 20 seconds left in the game. Right. And even though we might not be able to turn the score 15 to 25 around, but we could still go out saying that we did the best that we could.
Yeah.
And with my horse, I know that if my horse doesn't give me everything she has, that's because she's not feeling well.
Yeah.
And even sometimes with my horse, I will get a little irritated, and sometimes I do have to come back and say, this horse has given me a lot. And this horse has helped me. This horse has taught me so many life lessons. And so if she's not feeling well, if she's not running the way she's supposed to, we got to let her, give her a minute, let her regain herself, try to do it again.
Yeah.
And in rodeo, I will say that you'll hear this a lot in rodeo, but your biggest enemy is yourself.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you are competing against a bunch of other people with a bunch of other different horses, some people with higher caliber of horses. But at the end of the day, even though I do go into that rodeo arena to win, I'm also trying to beat my time. Because if I beat my time, there's a great chance that I'm going to end up getting the fastest time.
Yeah.
So fixing your own mistakes when you go into that arena, in my opinion, instead of trying to run a run that you've never ran before and start kicking them in the wrong place, trying to overdo it, that can lead to disaster. So if you go in there, you run your race, you do what you're supposed to do, that's how smooth is fast.
I have to agree with Renee. This is all a metaphor for life. These are like,
it really is. Everything.
so I have a great idea that I'm going to give you my intellectual property right now in front of God and everyone, that you can do, pictures of like rodeo, and you do rodeo with these like this. This is not a joke. These like life lessons about how having the horse and caring for the horse and running your race and not comparing. Like, this is really, I'm not joking when I'm like, this would be a wonderful inspirational book, because it is absolutely how we, lessons for us all to kind of incorporate and hold on to our lives, whatever they are. It's really cool. Theresa, I do want to take a moment and welcome you and hear from you. While you were gone, we heard a little bit from Morse about his family, that Morissa is first generation involved in rodeo, but Morse has family who come from an agricultural background, a horse trainer, uncle or cousin in Florida, and so there's a comfort and familiarity with animals and the interest in the rodeo. So I wanted to ask you about your background, your family background, and how you how rodeo came into you. Oh, you know what, Theresa, we actually can't hear you. I think you're muted, actually. There you go.
Sorry about that. So rodeo came to me actually, with myself and Morse, we went to a rodeo. Now I do have family on my father's side that live in Tennessee, and my uncle actually raised horses. They broke horses. He raised miniature horses, which to me, those are the meanest horses that's out there. But my dad was, he didn't compete in rodeos, but he did like to ride. And we actually have a picture of him when he's about maybe 8 or 9 years old on his horse, Frank, where he's actually the horse is actually rearing, like you would see back in the 1950s, as a cowboy commercial. And I always loved horses. And as a matter of fact, when I was growing up, I used to drive almost every weekend to Brandywine, which, is like 40 minutes away from me. And my dad used to always try to talk me out of it, because he was always afraid I was going to get hurt.
So you would ride on a horse to Brandywine, or?
Yes, I would. Myself and one of my good friends, we loved horses. We would get up every morning on Saturday morning, and we would drive out to Brandywine and take the money that we worked all week to make to pay to ride that horse for 1 hour.
Okay. Wow.
For
Yeah.
1 hour. Yep.
Yeah. That's dedication. On the subject of horses, and Morissa, I'm sure the horse knows if the horse didn't perform as the team wanted it to. How does the horse exhibit that? Or, because it seems like there's this symbiotic relationship, as And I'm not, I didn't grow up around horses. So, and it may be very obvious to people who grew up around horses, but it's not to me. So,
Well, usually I'll give a comparison. Sometimes it's difficult to communicate with the horses because at the end of the day they can't really say, darn, I had a bad run, I'm sorry. But sometimes, like if I have a good run with Lena, my pole horse, and one of the reasons that the most influential horses in my life, when I exit the arena, most of the time when she's happy and she's excited, she'll take her head and she'll like nudge me with it, like, hey, I did a good job. Tell me I did a good job. Didn't I do a good job? And sometimes when she comes out and she doesn't do a good run, I make sure that I pet my horses. I tell them good job, because at the end of the day, they still went in there and they gave me everything that they had. She ran her heart out. Even if she knocked a pole or she knocked a barrel, she still tried her best, and she should be rewarded for that. If I made a mistake, 90% of the time it'll be my fault. So there is no reason for me to punish her. And sometimes she'll hang her head down, let me pet her, just be in a more calm, selective spot. But if she comes out the arena and she's hot, like, oh yeah, I did that. Look at the run I just laid down. She'll start nudging me with her nose, and I think it's a cute thing. And sometimes I've just got to be like, hey, stop it. But they're animals. And it's funny how sometimes they show off their emotions.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah. Kyla, you said that we have 2 questions. Do you want to take
a couple questions in the chat? And I will say, for people who are watching, we do love questions and comments, so feel free to type in whatever platform you're watching, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Please share your thoughts and comments with us. And we do have 2 right now. So the first one here is from Ms. Vivian, and she's wondering if you like what you are doing.
I would say yes. I really enjoy competing in rodeos, and if I would have to choose like all the wonderful aspects of it, I really enjoy the camaraderie that comes with rodeo. Rodeo, yes, I have a rodeo team. The Maryland High School Rodeo Association is a rodeo team, but we still are competing against each other, and we're all competing against each other to qualify for national finals. But we are all just one big happy family. Mm-hmm. And I remember the second year that I was at Battle by the Bay at Harrington, my horse Lena that I was just talking about, she didn't want to go in the arena for barrels. Mm. And so I'm kicking her, I'm trying to get her, and my dad's trying to get her in the arena. But at the end of the day, like I said, 1,000-pound animal, you can't really force her in there. And so I'm starting to freak out because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to miss my run. Lena, please get in there. And next thing I know, these group of girls, they don't know me, but they see me struggling. So they take their horses and they start pushing Lena in with their horses so that Lena can go in there and I have a chance to run. And I didn't know these girls, but at some point, I would like to say almost every barrel racer every barrel racer, pole bender, speed event person, your horse gets hot before it goes in the arena. So either it starts bunny hopping when it starts rearing up because it wants to run, or sometimes it starts backing up like my horse Gracie does. But most speed event will have some once in their life difficulty getting in the arena, so people know how it feels. And just the instantaneous way that they just came in to help. And I knocked a barrel on that run because I was so in my head. I was freaked out. I thought I was going to miss my run. But that moment of the girls coming to help me has really stuck with me. And even in rodeo, if you need something, somebody at the rodeo will give it to you. Like I lost 4 state finals. I lost both of my my crops, which something I use to help my horse run faster. And so I would run before my run. Hey, can I borrow this? Sure. Run in, do my run, give it right back. Yeah. It's a great place to be around, full of people that are so supportive of you, even though you're competing against each other.
Yeah. Yep. You can have the 2 exist in the same space. It doesn't have to be nasty, contentious, or even, with knives out. Yeah, that's right. It's yeah.
So we have another great question that I really would love to share. It is from the mayor of Colmar Manor, who is watching on LinkedIn right now. And and she said, what can we do to support young people, especially minority youth, in getting interested in this sport? And by the way, Colmar Manor would love to invite you and your horses to the community.
We would love to be there. I would most definitely say, first of all, exposure, because a lot of people don't know what rodeo is. A lot of people don't know that rodeo exists in Maryland or even in the United States, period. When you think of rodeo, you think of Texas or Oklahoma. I remember my first year at Nationals, I was the Maryland High School Rodeo Queen, and I had on my pretty sash, a nice all shirt, and my crown, Miss Maryland High School Rodeo, and they looked and they went, Maryland? Where is that? And so that was an influential time that really inspired me to go out and promote rodeo, because there is rodeo on the East Coast. There's rodeo in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, all up and down the East Coast. But besides giving people the knowledge that rodeo is here and we're having a great time, sponsorships, helping the rodeo team or helping rodeo, just specific rodeo kids in general, because rodeo is a very financially strained sport. Just for the means to have the necessary being, the horse, is pricey.
Yeah, and it reminds me of how. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Morris.
No, I just wanted to piggyback on what Morissa said. Like I think the first part is exposure, right? So, for example, when we have the big events, basketball, baseball, we know what they are, and there's a corporate backing for that, right? There's a community backing for that. So there are different groups, tribal baseball groups, et cetera. So if somehow, and to try to be more specific for the mayor, is being able to get the community, the business side of it, right, to kind of help support the notion of the sport, right? And so, for example, the Maryland High School Rodeo Association, it is a not-for-profit association, right? So they're always asking for, community support, sponsorship, et cetera. And what we're doing now, this medium helps spread the word. So there could be children who are interested, who may not have, as Morissa mentioned, the financial means for it. But that starts to bridge the gap and come together when you have businesses and then local government, et cetera, who say, oh, well, we didn't know that this was a demand. So when we go to Annapolis and we are putting in our budget, let's put a line item budget in for this particular sport. Like we have, like in Bowie, we have a rec center that's just for basketball, right? So someone in the city, in the council said, we want somewhere for kids to play basketball. And then there was money allotted to do that. And I think those are the steps that will move us toward having it be a bit more accessible to more people.
Yeah, no, that's good counsel. Theresa, before you were able to join us, Morris and Morissa talked a little bit about the experience at the Howard County Fairground, where it was pouring rain and muddy and just, and I raised sort of the spectrum of, the dangerousness of the slipping and sliding and with it. So from a mom's perspective, how do you handle maybe some of those nail biting, and especially, you're in the health profession, a health professional, like, how do you deal with that?
First and foremost, you have to put your faith in God that it's going to work out. Speaking of that rodeo, particularly, there was a train wreck. Morissa was coming up the hill with Lena, and Lena was a new horse, and I was already afraid of Morissa riding Lena, and they slipped on the asphalt, and they both went down. It was quite frightening, but after it happened, they had some scrapes, but Lena, the horse, she let Morissa get up, and Morissa was discombobulated and upset, but that horse laid on the ground until Morissa got up and cleared far enough away from her that she kicked herself up where she knew she wouldn't hurt her. Wow. And then I immediately said, she can ride that horse. That horse will not hurt my baby. I mean, wow. I knew right then and there, because she could have kicked up and she could have crushed her, and she did not. She laid there and let her get up. And then even after that, she came up. And as Morissa said, she put her head down by her side. Like, are you okay?
Wow.
But it's scary sometimes.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that the three things that we just talked about, the Lena not going in, pushing her in there, her hitting a can on that barrel run, and slipping on the asphalt, that happened back to back.
Wow.
Wow.
So my mind was discombobulated. Like, I remember pushing it in, and then I remember the asphalt slip. Like, there are certain parts that it happens like that. And that's another thing that's dangerous about rodeo, is that anything could go wrong in the span of a second. Like, a horse could get out. Except if there are stalls and if there are not stalls, because if there aren't stalls, people set up pins and horses break out of those pins, and then you have horses running up the road and people got to go and get them. But rodeo is probably one of the most in my opinion, one of the most unpredictable sports that you can compete in.
Yeah, you're right.
Morissa,
I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
And Morissa is blessed because that was one of the first things her father taught her when she was riding: an exit. You always have to have an exit. You have to have an escape. Whether it's something happens to your horse or something happens to you, how to get off the horse safely. And it's still scary. I mean, I've seen, not Morissa, but a lot of adults that barrel race, and I've been sitting there at the end where they, the horse has gone down and has, rolled on them, and it's scary, from especially being ER trauma. I know what can happen.
Yeah. That's another life lesson that teamwork, picking yourself up, having faith, allowing the process to run, and having an exit plan, right? Having an exit strategy, having a contingency. Yeah, this conversation thus far has been full of life lessons. Things that
I was like, that's going to be in the book. They're putting that part in the book.
Are you going to be the editor, Kyla? I mean, you've given the intellectual property.
Right. And we're going to put that in the book. Always have an exit strategy. I'm ready. We're ready to go. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I can recall a time where I think this is when I very first started riding, but I went on a trail ride. And we joke about this now. We'll cry laughing about this. But I remember the day, and you see him? I remember the day, and I was terrified. We were going on a trail ride, and it poured down rain, I think, for like the week before. So there were mud puddles, and there was water everywhere. And I was on Maya, and Maya just barely meets the requirements of a horse. She is tiny. And so I'm sitting on Maya, we're walking through, and my dad's like, okay, there's this big puddle, keep kicking her through. And so I'm kicking her, and it's hot. So so I keep kicking her. She just goes down. She lays down in the mud and then rolls on her side. I am stuck under this horse. I am freaking out because this water is dark it is mucky. I do not know what is in this water. And my dad and I like to joke about it because my dad's like, okay, keep her kicking. And I just go, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy! I just go down. And we joke about it now, but when I tell you I was genuinely terrified because I could not get out because she was on my leg.
Yeah.
And I'm laying down in this water thinking I'm desperately going to die by getting bitten by a snake or some form of unknown substance.
Yes.
Always have an exit plan, please.
Yes.
I think there's 1,000 pounds on her, that there's a snake or something unknown in the water in the mud.
Yes.
I don't like snakes, okay?
No. Me either. Don't sign me up. No.
We have another audience question. Daniel is wondering, how long do you plan to compete, and what might you do after that? After the book, would you like to be a motivational speaker? I'm reading between the lines here on this question.
Yes. And keep plugging the book, because I've been asking Morissa to write a book.
Okay.
For 2 years.
Yeah,
I'm going to be honestly, for 2 years.
Well, so look, this is the recording. You can go back and all those one-liners and things, have a beautiful picture to go with it. Coffee table book, bam.
It's ready. It's written itself in the last 45 minutes.
Can we find a picture mid-asphalt slip where it's just like, bam?
Absolutely.
That would be amazing. You can recreate it.
Oh, no, we're not recreating. One time was scary enough. But to answer that question, one of my goals is to become a national champion. I've had the honor and the blessing of becoming a state champion, so I would like to either place top 10 at the national finals in Gillette, Wyoming, or win an event. And the competition out there is tough. It is tough. Especially, it's different because I'll give an example for poles. On the East Coast, a fast time for poles, you could win the show with the 21, which is a considerable. It's hard to achieve a 21 from personal experience. I've only ran a few 21s, probably about 3 or 4, and I've done about 30 pole bending. And when you go to nationals and you have these girls who are running 19s, you're in a whole different ball game. And it also has to do with the caliber of horse that you have, the kind of training that it has. And just one of I have 2 more. I have this year, and then I have next year's national finals that I'm going to go, and I'm going to try to become a national champion and place in the top 10, just so I could see the progression of being there, because it's the same thing with the mental state. It's very difficult being at those big shows, and because there are a lot of people there, trailers as far as the eye can see, and each of those trailers maybe has about 2 or 3 kids in it, and kids everywhere, adults everywhere, vendors, rodeos 2 times a day, 2 arenas running at the same exact time. So you're trying to listen what's going on in the barrel arena to see what's the fast time in the barrel arena while I'm getting ready to run poles. It's an overload for your senses. But just to be able to win that national title, that's one of my dreams.
Nice. So that's your next goal in the next 24
months.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we're working on. We're putting in the hours. We're practicing every day. We're trying to get there.
Do you think you've talked about some of the things that may make a difference between sort of a Maryland rodeo competition versus Wyoming, but do you think sort of the East Coast culture versus the West Coast plays a significant role, or, lifestyle, or right? Because, we're living in sort of city centers, although we have places where you have horses, you know what I'm saying? Speak to that if you think that gives an advantage to West Coast
do you want to speak
people.
Well, yes, it is. It's a difference, as we spoke earlier, from a historical perspective, right? So here, we do have a large agricultural presence on the East Coast, right? We know that. And then But as we move into this particular sport of rodeo, there isn't as large of a presence, right? So, for example, in the state of Maryland, our good friend Ross Petticord, who is executive director of the Maryland Horse Industry Board, I called and asked him, well, what are the stats now? And in Maryland, we have one of the largest populations of horses in the country. Like, you wouldn't know that, but we do, per capita, per geographical location. But it's very heavily equestrian based, polo based, English based. So for these children, or this particular equine sport, there isn't a huge presence. So you don't have the same access to trainers. You don't have the same access to breeding or competition, high caliber horses. So there is a difference. And in Morissa's case, for example, because again, this area isn't predominantly Western competition, the kids grow up doing other things, right? So we know Maryland is well known for the number of NBA stars that it has produced, the number of NFL stars it has produced. So again, another change, right? I don't want to say disadvantage, but another difference in access, where in west of the Mississippi, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
Like, it's generational.
Yeah.
Some of these children that Morissa compete against could very well be fourth or fifth generation this way of life.
Yeah.
Competition as well as the lifestyle. So there are those differences.
And even to piggyback off of that, depending on geographical location, and there aren't a lot of trainers here. Some of the kids on my rodeo team, they go visit barrel racing trainers that help them improve their skills. And there's only like 3 I can think of that I know of, but in Maryland. But if you go to Texas or somewhere, you have trainers and you have people in families who are trainers, and you have people that have ranches, and it's just the difference of the way of life. And I remember I was in Vegas last year, and I talked to the president of the National High School Rodeo Association, James Higginbottom, and he asked me specifically, if I could find a barrel racing or pole bending trainer so that we could start having clinics up here in the on the East Coast, because there aren't that many people there aren't that many people who have achieved so much in Maryland and that know enough to become like consistent horse trainers.
Yeah, that is interesting. And so back to sort of the mayor's question about attracting more young people, there are some built-in, I'll just say, challenges.
Yes.
That are not insurmountable, but you're right. If you're not living in a community where that is the way of life,
yes,
it takes more commitment and more sacrifices, for a family to immerse yourself in, in this particular way of life and culture, and because it is not the norm. So yes. Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful experience, right? It does feel that there is some hopefulness there, because Kurt Walbert, he's the national director for the Maryland High School Rodeo Association. He's explained to us the past 2 seasons how Maryland has sent the contingency to finals, the largest that they've sent since the beginning of the organization. So there is some hope there, right? We've seen the team grow significantly over the past 3 years, past 2 years especially. So we're hoping that this trend will continue, because as Morissa stated, all of the benefits to the kids of the camaraderie, the competition, and then the responsibility that comes from this way of life.
The life
right?
lessons.
Yeah, I mean, you can open the back door and let your dog out into the yard, right?
Yeah.
But if you horsing, you have to get up even if you're sick, right? If you break your foot like I did last year, you still have to do the chores. I mean, so it will put that grit in you and that level of commitment that says it's a lot different than just saying, well, clean the bathroom, right?
Right.
You might blow that off a day or two, but that livestock, you have to tend to them every day.
Yeah, you can't be a weekender, right?
Not if you want to have your horses in the best condition and you truly want to be competitive. Now, there is a place for that. There is a place for people who are just what we call weekend warriors, right? They ride once a week, they go to show on the weekend. They're there to have fun. They have a good time. You bring your grill, family spend together. And that's one of the wonderful things about this sport. When Morissa did gymnastics, Terry and I, all we could do was watch her practice and watch her compete. Right. But this way, we get to ride, we get to have a good time. Terry has a smorgasbord of food, and everybody has a good time. So it's more than just the winning aspect. But to your point, there is a place for that weekend warrior.
Right.
Yeah, for Morissa and for us.
But not if you're in the competitive, serious competitive. I wanted to ask one question. Kyla, I'm sorry. All of this. Right. All of the conversations and the skills and the life lessons that we've talked about, I know translates academically, and we know that you excel academically. So speak just a little to that, because I think that is something that others can learn, that you can actually do both. You can excel in sports and excel academically. So speak a little bit about that and how those skills translate.
Well, I'll most definitely say, especially since I went on that tangent of trying to straight A's, like getting those straight A's so I could get my horse, I think it really just became a standard for me. And sometimes I think I hold myself at a too high of a standard, because now my grade drops to a B and I'm like, okay, we need to get this, so I can get back to an A. I'm not settling for a B. And at the end of the day, I think it's really important, because your education is extremely important. And a lot of my education has helped me with my queen and with just becoming a good rodeo horseman in general, because when you are the queen, that's one of my favorite parts about being queen was getting the inside look of the rodeo. When you just compete in a rodeo, depending on who you are, you might compete, say your hellos, goodbyes, and you leave. But when you're the queen or you're a part of the board for the association, you learn the parts that go into the grand entry, the costs, the fundraising, all the different aspects that work into putting on this extravagant show that a lot of people go up and see and they're like, wow, this looks cool. But there are 20 different people working to make sure it runs smooth. When we were at state finals, the barrier for the roping box broke, and the barrier is one of the most important parts of the roping box, because if you break the barrier, that's a 10-second penalty. So that could be a make or break of who gets first place. And that broke, and everybody came in and started helping out so it was smooth and it could get out. But I think holding myself academically and keeping myself up to a high standard, that just translated into my everyday life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'd love to ask what your plans are in the future, but we are out of time.
When I get that pinched lip face at Renee, that's our sign that we have come to the end, which is really not enough time. And I say this every time we do this. It's like an hour is not enough time, because I want to talk about your family involvement and I want to hear more from your parents. So I think we're probably going to have to bring you all back again for like a deeper dive. And I said in my opening remarks that we would talk about details about each of these different events. So you will definitely be hearing from us very soon to talk about a follow-up conversation. And
when you place at your goal here in the next 24 months, when you place nationally in the top 10. So
yes, Yes, we'll have you back multiple times. It has been so wonderful, and we appreciate your whole family being here and sharing your time with us. For people watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Mayor of Como Manor, I'm going to be in touch with you in just a minute, and we'll see what we can do to make a connection here. And so people watching and commenting and tuning in with us, we appreciate you because you're the reason that we are bringing this programming to you and to highlight who's in Prince George's County and what's happening. So thank you so much for your time. I do want to take a moment, and for those of you watching, let you know that we do have another community conversation coming up tomorrow, actually, with 3 young Prince George's County natives who are now at Towson University and won Towson University's College Cup with their food truck with a purpose. Everybody eats. So please join us tomorrow at this same time for another community conversation with other awesome Prince George's residents. I have put in the chat how you can find out a little bit more about Morissa. I'm going to put it on the screen again too. Go to ridingwithmorissahall.com. And thank you. I want to stop talking because now I've really gone over time. Again, thank you so much to the Hall family and for all of the viewers and to the library system once again for their partnership.
Yes,
Thank you.
It's been
Good
wonderful.
night.
We look forward to doing it again.
Yes.
Absolutely. And don't leave us just yet. Stay with us.
Yes, ma'am.